Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're on Module 2, Lesson 4, and we are still continuing with our division and our fractions. So here's my first problem. Toby runs 7 miles in 5 days. He runs the same number of miles each day. How many miles does Toby run each day? Okay. So this one I have to ask myself, am I dividing the miles into the days or the days into the miles? And sometimes this confuses people. So I think I'm going to divide the miles into the days. Now, I could continue with my pictures, or by now maybe I'm at a spot where I can say I know that I'm going to divide 7 miles by 5 days. So I have one group I can make. One group of 5 is 5, and I have a leftover 2. So this becomes my numerator, and this becomes my denominator. So I'm going to say that Toby's going to run 1 whole mile and 2/5 each of the 5 days. Would that make sense to give me, if he does this 5 times, would I end up with 7 miles? I think that makes sense. What if I had thought it was the other way, and I had thought it was 5 divided by 7? Well, I could set it up like this then. So 5 divided by 7. And I know if I have 5, I can't put it into 7 groups. So I'd have a 0. And I'm left with 0 and 5/7. Well, this one wouldn't make sense, because if he doesn't even run 1 mile each of the 5 days, is he ever going to end up with 7 miles? No, he has to run more than 1 mile each day to end up with 7 miles. So that one did not make sense. Okay. Now, I did all this work, but I might have seen the pattern that I could have just said 5 divided by 7 equals 5/7, because this is also a division symbol right there. Okay, so let's do some together. Here's our first one, and it says, Mrs. Chan uses 13 yards of fabric to make 4 identical quilts. How many yards of fabric does Mrs. Chan use for each quilt? Okay, so she's going to take 13 yards of fabric and divide it into her 4 quilts. Okay, so I know my answer is going to be greater than 1 because she has more than the groups she's making it into. So let's do whoops, I did it the wrong way, friends. I'm so sorry. 13 divided into 4 groups. Well, because I know my times table facts, my times tables and my math facts, I know that 13 divided into 4 groups would be 3. I can make 3 groups of 4, and 3 groups of 4 is 12, and I'll have 1 left over. And that becomes my numerator, and this becomes my denominator. So Mrs. Chan is going to use 3 whole yards and 1/4 yard for each of her 4 quilts. Okay, let's look at our next one. Our next one says, 40 students share 5 pizzas equally. How much pizza does each student get? Now, just because they put the 40 first, that doesn't mean that's what we're dividing. We have to really look at our story. Our story is we have the 5 pizzas that we're dividing. So we're dividing the 5 pizzas. So 5 pizzas divided between 40 children. Okay, so that's definitely not going to work, right? So if I have 5 pizzas and I have to share them with 40 kids, each child's not going to get a whole pizza. So I know if I have 5, I can't put it into 40 groups. So that would be 0. 0 groups of 40 is 0, and I'm left with 5. So, and I should have wrote my equation. We'll write that in a minute. So this becomes my numerator, and this becomes my denominator. So my answer from 5 pizzas divided between 40 children, my answer is 5/40. So So because I have less that I have and more groups, my answer is going to be less than 1. So I have 5/40ths as my answer for that one. And I might have been able to do this without the work because I knew that it was going to be smaller. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, when you do your homework tonight, it's going to ask you to do a tape diagram. You don't have to do that if it makes it harder for you. Okay, have a wonderful evening. Good night.